letting go of some of that anxiety. Some of us can get so addicted to the anxious feelings, like it almost becomes an addiction that our body is just always looking for them. And this is one way that we can switch out of that survival mode and more into that thriving mode of like, well, what is it that I actually want?
Welcome to A Sister's Love, the podcast that helps women who are healing by having those deep conversations, giving practical advice and words of encouragement. Come on, let's talk about it. Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome to another episode of A Sister's Love podcast. On today's episode, we have another beautiful guest. Her name is Christina Smith, and she's going to come on here and talk to you about self-love and what that truly means and how we can start to add that into our everyday life and have a deeper understanding of what it is to love yourself and how we sacrifice ourselves when we're not loving ourselves. But before we dive into that, I would love to introduce myself. Hi, I am Rose, and I'm your host here at A Sister's Love podcast. And I am just one woman with one voice trying to help other women heal and grow and love themselves more and heal from trauma. So if you are a woman who is on her healing journey and need resources or a safe place or just need a place that feels like home, then you are in the right place. I would love for you to be part of our sisterhood. For you to do that, I would just love for you to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you never miss another episode of A Sister's Love podcast. Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome to another episode of A Sister's Love podcast. Today we have another beautiful guest, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself and about what she's doing and how she's going to help you today.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks for having me here. I'm Christina Smith, and I am a life coach. I work mostly with midlife women, and we talk about confidence and what that means because I know many of us were not taught what confidence is or what that looks like or even what that could feel like. We were really taught how to be good little girls, right? And that's who our parents meant, you're doing what I want you to. And then, so we know how to fulfill other people's expectations, but sometimes really fulfilling our own or even setting expectations for ourselves or intentions for ourselves is something that we don't always think about, but we're, for some reason, in the back of our mind, we're always thinking about how to please other people. So I'm really excited to talk about any of those things: self-love, how we step into more confidence, how we start self-validating. I think that's a huge piece of midlife. And I think it's also why, they say like old women don't care what other people think. And I think that that's a huge phase of our lives, is stepping into that, like, I know best for me rather than I know best for everyone else.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story, what got you started into this field?
Absolutely. Yes. I was a box checker when I grew up. I had a pretty miserable childhood growing up. And so all I kept telling myself is one day I'll be able to move out, live my own life, do my own thing. And yet at the same time, I took on a lot of my mom's expectations, which was, you go to college, you get good grades so you can get into a good college, then you go to a good college, then you get a nice job and you get a promotion and you get the husband and the house and by 35, I had checked off all those boxes and all these things were supposed to make me happy. So I was like, surely I've arrived. I should be happy now. And I wasn't. I was probably the most depressed I had ever been in my life. And I've had bouts of depression. So at 35, I had to start reassessing, like, why am I not happy? I just clicked all the boxes to the things that should make me happy. I earned this. I sacrificed so much for this. Like, surely I should be happy. And what I really learned was, if you're not happy on the way, you're not going to be happy when you get there.
Yeah. That's so true.
And so I had to start looking at things like self-validation, like how much of myself was I giving up to make other people happy while sacrificing my own? What choices was I making because I thought I should, or it was the next right step? Like you go to college, I get a degree in political science. Surely there's some kind of marketing job out there for me, the next right step, rather than like really building from the bottom up and going, what is it that I actually want? How do I actually want to show up in life? Is this, sacrificing and being exhausted to get these big goals just to get there and then be disappointed that I don't feel any differently about myself. How can I get there? And I realized I had to start really getting to know myself, which is a really scary prospect for a lot of women because we focus so much on those flaws. Like we forget about the big picture and all the things that we've accomplished and all the situations we've survived. And instead we're looking at like these tiny little flaws in our picture. And I had to learn how to really accept them. And what I always say is be gentle with your humanness, because humanness means that we have flaws. I mean, that's just part of it. We're not robots, unfortunately. You can't program me to do the exact right thing every day. So learning how to accept that even some of my flaws really have gold in them was a big step. So that's why I preach so much about confidence and self-love. And I hated when I heard people talk about, I'm like, oh, here's a self-love topic again. Like, what does that even mean? What does that even look like? Because I had so few mentors in my life that really seemed like, to them, loving themselves was accomplishing goals. And I wanted to be able to love myself without having to do anything. Like, I don't want to feel like I have to do something in order to love myself. What if we could just love ourselves? It's almost like there's other people in our lives where we just love them. If they have flaws, we just get over it. And we're just like, yeah, that's them. They forget stuff. Like my husband, he's a lovely creature, but he forgets things all the time. Now I could get mad at him or shame him for forgetting things, but that's not going to make him a better person. And how can I treat myself that way where, okay, I made a mistake and I can either learn from that or I might make the mistake again and I might have to apologize or do something, an act of service in order to get right again. But all that's really normal. And I think that that's something that we forget, just like our feelings. You know, people call them positive or negative feelings, which I just think is so icky.
Icky.
They're all they're all good. They're all valid. We wouldn't have them if they weren't valid. And so I call them uncomfortable feelings, those negative feelings, because it's just uncomfortable. And if we get the skills to be able to sit with them and be with them, then they pass a lot faster and we don't have the same anxiety around them. So it's really just about sitting with the discomfort of being human, I think. That's really what self-love is.
Yeah. I want to touch on like two things that you said. Like, I'm so happy that you brought up like this self-love. Like everybody talk about it and everybody like, oh, self-love this and like, oh, make sure you do your affirmations. Make sure you do this. And they never actually talk about what actually self-love is. And it's just loving yourself unconditionally in whatever state that you are in. You shouldn't have to do anything, say anything, or accomplish anything to have it. It's just a gift that you have that you can give to yourself regardless of what you're going through or what you've been through. And a lot of people don't understand. They think it's something they have to work towards. And it's just automatically there. It's something that you can do. You can love on yourself regardless of what state of mind or position you are. And I just want people to understand that we always focus on how can I accomplish this? You don't have to accomplish it. You just have to start doing it. You just have to start putting yourself first. You have to start just loving on yourself the way that you, like you said, the way that we love on everyone around us. And like your husband, like we see that he had flaws, but it didn't stop you from loving him. So why is it stopping you from loving yourself when you love somebody else that have flaws? You know what I'm saying? So why are you so tough on yourself? And that's what you need to sit back. And the second thing is about those positive and negative feelings and emotions. I call them indicators. Like, is this it's a trigger? Like, why is this emotion coming up? Use them as indicators. What is inside of me that I need to explore more? What is this bringing up inside of me that I haven't conquered yet? You know what I'm saying? So those are just good ways for you to navigate you and get to know you better and help you work positively into your future and move forward in a more lightful direction.
I love that you say that so much, because my anger, my sadness, my grief, that all indicates something. Sadness and grief usually indicates that something was really wonderful and now it's not, and I'm sad about it, right? And that's okay. It's actually quite awesome for us to recognize those things. Or anger, you know, this person crossed my boundaries, whether or not they knew about my boundaries. There was a big conflict there. And I think it's just so special to look at these feelings because they they really do inform you. And then we can start, making boundaries and, speaking with our voices and standing up for ourselves. And I think that that's so essential. I was just talking to a client last night where she struggles with her mom. And so we worked out this whole clear process for her to get clear on what it is that her mom, and have a conversation with her. And she's like, well, I have to do it in the moment when my mom says or does the thing that triggers me. And I was like, that is perfect. And she's like, I don't know that it's going to change her behavior. And I said, I doubt it will. I mean, just so we're sure. I doubt it will.
Same exact thing with my mom and my grandmother. I'm like, Mom, I give you grace. Give that lady grace. Sometimes we just have to give people grace and accept them for who they are and meet them at their level. Don't expect more or want more from them than what they can give.
Oh, yeah. We can always ask for what we want, but we may not get it. But the self-love part about speaking up for ourselves is not about changing the other person. No. It's about that inner child in us that's wounded, that's saying, why doesn't anybody else stick up for me? Why doesn't anybody say what's on my mind? Why can't I speak? What's truth for me? So sometimes us speaking up isn't about changing the other person. It's about reassuring that inner child that we still all have feels heard and seen, and that she knows that she can trust that we're going to protect her. That if somebody says something awful, we're going to stand up and go, nope, we're not taking that. We're not going to accept that because my inner child's watching me. And we wonder why we get so wounded when we're adults and why these things trigger us and we get stuck in this drama. That's our wounded inner child. And she wants to know that we're going to stick up for her. And that's what speaking up is for. It's not really for changing the other. I mean, good luck. I mean, it might happen.
It might, if they care. But the older the people are, the harder it is harder.
Ma'am.
And just meet them, try to meet them. And especially if it's your parents and you really want to be in their life, just meet them where they are. Don't expect more and don't put yourself out there more to get hurt. You know what I'm saying? Just literally find a mutual place where you know that you can meet your mother or your father or your family member, and y'all just meet there. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to go above and beyond. I know I can change them. I know I have all the tools. Not if they don't want them.
Oh my goodness, like the Disney princess thinking she can change the beast into the handsome prince, right?
Yeah.
It's just such fairy tales that we were given, but yeah, we really can't change anybody else. And, it's only when we're in that wounded child that we really want to control everybody else because we're feeling out of control. So we want to control everything else around us and we can't. Just being able to speak up for ourselves when it's necessary. I mean, at some point, we can get to the point where, okay, my mom's just crazy. There she goes off her crazy again. And I can let it go because I realize now it's not about me, right? But as long as it's still triggering me and those strong emotions are coming up, it's helpful to say something in I statements. I mean, this is getting a little bit off the grid for self-love, but I think that this is really important too, because if I can just say, wow, when you said or did this, I felt, and the story I told myself about me was, and what I want is, boom,
boom.
That's it. Yeah, I may not get what I want, but I've stated it at least. And now you know what I do and I don't like about this. And there's an opportunity to build a deeper relationship there. It doesn't, it's going to happen, just decides whether or not the other person is into it or not too. And unfortunately, we can't control all that. And like you said, the older people get, it's so much harder to change or even acknowledge that they've been doing this for the last 70, 80 years.
Yeah. And then, like you said, when you do those I statements, you said, when you make me feel like this, I did this. And you're going to and then after that, you set that boundary. So when you do this in the future, I will leave. And I'm not saying that I won't come back, but as long as if this behavior comes up again, when I do come back, I will leave. And eventually, as you show those patterns, maybe they'll change it. They might not, but it might also open a door for them to start healing their inner child too. Because I always tell people, stop telling people what to do. Stop telling them to be the example that they need. And then once they see you do it, they might actually get the confidence to do it. Be like, oh, it's actually working for this person. And I love this person. I see this person every day and I see the transformation. Maybe I'll try it. Maybe it's not as bad as they think it might hurt a little bit, but I see how much they grow and I really want to go in that direction. So it's just being that example. We always talking. People love to talk. We love to talk so much. And sometimes we could talk to our faces blue, but if they actually see it in action, you have more likeliness for them to change than just talking to them.
And they have to change, right? Like if our cycle, usually there's like a cycle in a relationship with drama, like with either anger or sadness, whichever way we flow. And if I stop that, like if we usually get to the point where we're screaming at each other or yelling at each other, and if when we start raising our voices, I'm like, hold on, I'm actually not going to participate in this as long as we're both raising our voices. Like you said, I can go walk away for 15 minutes and I'll come back when we can both be calm and cool and have a conversation about that. That has to change the relationship, right? That has to change the conversation. The other person no longer can do that yelling back, right? So we're making that break in the cycle. And from there, we can make changes. We're not going to be able to control everything that they do, but they are going to have to change, right? I mean, because that whole cycle is being broken. So I really do believe that one person can change a relationship, but we can't control how the other person changes. It might be really great. It might be, hey, this doesn't work for me, and so this is no longer a relationship I want to maintain. That could be too, but at least you know.
Yeah, at least you know exactly. And I'm like, you have to be okay. And that's what people have to do. They have to be okay with knowing that it might not turn out the way they want. And it actually might end something that they want to prolong. Like, and that's what people get scared of. They're scared to set those boundaries. And they scared to move forward in certain aspect of loving themselves, like putting themselves first, because they know it's sacrifice, losing things that they don't want to lose.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. It does come back to self-love, because it's one of those things where I know for me, whenever I got in a conflict before, it was like, okay, I would just shut down and then not say anything and then not speak up for myself later. And that's really that's the truest example of self-love, is to say, actually, I don't deserve to be talked to this way. And so I'm not going to continue this conversation. That is pure self-love. I mean, and it's also love for the other person. Who wants to be in a screaming match with another person? That doesn't feel fun to me ever. It's never felt fun to me. So it's one way that we love ourselves. And so I have a self-love course, and we talk about 5 key ingredients, and that one would fall under courage, right? Having to speak up for ourselves, even when we're like, I had to clear with a leader on a weekend just a couple weeks ago that I was staffing. And in my heart, it was like, if this person's a leader, surely they know more than me. And I should just shut up and go along with it. And yet something was like really triggered in my heart. And so I had to be able to speak up for myself. And although it was scary, after I was done, my inner child was like, yeah, you got this. Like, you got me. I know that you're going to figure it out and you're going to keep me safe. And when we can start trusting ourselves in that way, that to me is like one of the essentials to self-love, is like, I trust. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's one of the biggest, scariest things for most of my clients, is not being able to control the future and not knowing what's going to happen. However, if I trust myself, I know that whatever shows up, I'm going to be able to handle it in the best way that I can. And that's it.
That is true. And I love that you said that, because you talk about leaders. And like, that's the same thing that we do with our kids. So I have kids and I give them permission to challenge me. Like, if I said something or I did something to make them feel uncomfortable, they have a right to address it with me. And some people have that come across as disrespectful. And I'm like, no, if I don't give them that space now, they won't have it as an adult. So
they won't speak up.
Authority figure. They think authority figures do not have the right over you. They have the right to aid you, not to own you. And some parents kind of misconstrue us aiding our kids to become a better person than controlling them or having authority over them. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things I do have authority over because you are not 18. But when it comes to you, your person, I shouldn't dictate that. You know what I'm saying? You got to develop, you have to think, you have to mold yourself into who you are. Like you said, your mom put up these bars, like these goals, and like you need to hit this and this and this and that. So you thought that's what you have to accomplish. She never sat down with you and allow you to make those decisions yourself. Like, what do you want to do? Do you even want to be married? Do you even want kids? You never thought of that. You never had a moment to think if I wanted those things for myself. You just thought those are things that you had to accomplish until you accomplish them. Like, hold on, I did all of this. So what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to give my kids, we need to give our kids a space to explore themselves, to figure out what those goals are and things like that. Like my daughter herself, like she's an artist and stuff like that. I really want her to go to college to expand her horizons and stuff like that. She went for one semester and she was like, it ain't for me. And I'm like, it is, but it's not my choice. It's not my choice. I see
not for her right now.
Yeah, I see how much her art has grown, and that's just one semester. And I'm like, if you see what I see, you would know. But for her, is not where she needs to be at this moment. So I cannot force her to be somewhere that she's not comfortable and she doesn't feel 100% at. So I had to let her make her own choices. So it hurt.
I love that though, because I think that we all have like a timeline that we have expected either for ourselves or for our children or whatever. And then now I work with women who are in their early 40s and they're like, well, I didn't have kids. Is there something wrong with me? I never really wanted to get married. Is there something wrong with me? And it's like, no. And everybody thinks like it has to be done by a certain time. It's just so crazy. And what's even crazier is like we make all these plans for the first 4 decades of our lives. And then about 40 is when just about every woman starts going, now what?
No, yeah.
I grew up, I became the thing, and now what? Like, and it's so crazy that we live so long now. I mean, on average, that we're going to live a whole nother half a life without any plans, which is fine. I'm not saying everybody needs to have huge goals or plans, but we might want intentions so we know how we want to show up. We just don't want to feel like that paper bag kind of flowing out in the air that nobody's paying attention to, right? We want to be able to do more things, and that's self-love. You know, self-love is really looking within and going, what do I enjoy doing? Because in our culture, we have such a thing around productivity, right? Like, because I don't sell art, I only make art. It would be like, oh, you're not really an artist. Well, I am an artist. Just because I don't produce money from it doesn't mean that I can't go enjoy art, right? Or whatever it is. So we often think the thing that we do has to make money. And I think that that's baloney. I think sometimes we just do the thing we need to do to make the money, and then we do the thing that we actually love. And hopefully, you know, in midlife, we can start switching over to that and spend more time in the things that we actually enjoy. So that's another way of self-love, is really getting to know ourselves. And again, that can be scary for some people. What I think is really interesting is people get weirded out about going to therapy or getting assistance because they don't want to, like, I remember my first time at therapy and she's like, what are you so scared of? And I'm like, I'm scared I'm going to go down this rabbit hole and I'm never going to get out.
You're going to get
stuck down there. Yeah, I'm going to be stuck in this darkness forever. So we're always afraid of this like dark shadow piece of ourselves. But what I think we're even more scared of, like Marianne Williams said, is we're even more scared of the gold that we have, because we hide more of our golden qualities than we do with our shadow qualities. And that can be anything. Like my bitch energy is a golden quality.
Yeah.
Like, now, it didn't serve me so well in my 30s because I was spraying that stuff everywhere and then going, why don't I have any friends? Why is nobody around me? And once I got to claim that and go, actually, that same quality is what kept me safe when I was a kid. It put a big wall around me so people couldn't hurt me. And that's the only skill I had. And so that's what I used. So it was actually quite a gift that I survived my childhood because of that energy. And today I could still use it. If somebody's trying to carjack me or hurt me or be violent with somebody I love, that energy is going to come right out. And I'm really lucky I have that energy. So I think that self-love is also about looking at all the parts and saying, well, how is this a gift? Because they are gifts. The things that we don't like, they can be such gifts. Sometimes they're gifts so that other people can help us do it in a way. My husband can't remember Jack, but it gives me the opportunity to serve him and be like, put this on your calendar right now, right? Because I'm the organized one. And so it gives me a chance to use my skills. So, I mean, I think that what I would, if women were to get anything out of this, is don't be scared at looking at what's inside, because I promise you 95% of it at least is so damn beautiful. That's what's scary. And we feel like there's like a responsibility living up to that. And we already said that self-love isn't having to live up to anything. It's just about being who you are. Mm-hmm. And so just not be scared about looking at all the beautiful gifts that you have too, even if they didn't work out the way that you wanted to. We rarely control most of the things. What I work with my clients on is, what is your intention? Meaning, if all of this worked out perfectly, how would you want to feel? Because that's the most unique identifier as to who we are as a human being, how I want to feel. And I get everybody says happy. We don't really know what happy is anymore, do we? It's like such a generic word.
Many meanings to it, because I get it, happiness, but happiness has a different definition for every person. Mm-hmm. The generic definition is for us to just living the best life and just having everything we want. But I feel like happiness, they confuse happiness with peace. I don't want happiness. I want peace. I want peace.
And that's your happy, right? Yeah. So like my intentions this year are bold, open love. That's what happiness feels like. It feels bold, it feels open, and it feels like love. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's my truth, then that's all I have to do every day is show up as bold, open, and love. If I do that, I can self-validate and say, yes, I am awesome. I showed up the way I wanted to, even if the world burned down around me. I have no control over all the things. But as long as I showed up as bold, open, and love, then I know that I've been successful during the day. And that is so important, because I used to have these goals that you can't control all the things to a goal. And I would get so upset because the thing would show up with a blue bow instead of a red bow. And I would be so, all of a sudden the whole project was trash because the one detail didn't show up the way that I wanted to. Instead of saying, did I show up the way that I wanted to? Do I feel good about the way that the energy I brought to the situation? And if I do, then I can feel good about myself, even if the wrong bow came, or, it rained on the wedding, whatever it is. I can feel good about it. And that's one way that we can self-validate and stop overthinking things, and bring ourselves back down to what it is that we actually want. And that's actually, like, to me, the definition of thriving, something that I'm going after instead of something I'm running away from. Because to me, surviving is like, there's a problem and I just want it to be fixed, or I want it to go away. So I'm kind of running away from the discomfort of that problem. And thriving is, I'm running towards something I really want. And surviving is a lot easier for us, unfortunately. It's just built into our DNA. So having to the trick that we can do is constantly refocus our brain back to what is it that I actually want? Because all this stuff back here can keep us busy and anxious forever. And we can completely forget about where we want to go. Yeah. And so, just realigning to my intentions every day. How can I be bold, open, and love today?
Yep. And just switching up your perspective of things. Like you said, switch up your perspective because a lot of people go through a lot of things. We look for the things to validate what we feel. Mm-hmm. So we're searching throughout our day to validate the horrible parts of us. I told you I wasn't a good person because this person said this to me, or I told you that I wasn't going to accomplish because, like you said, you got the blue bow instead of the red bow. You know what I'm saying? Like, those things, we're looking for those things. So now we need to switch up the perspective and see, oh, I am bold because I did this. Mm-hmm. Because this happened. I am this. You got to switch up that perspective and search out those things instead of those things that validate those negative voices, those negative thoughts, those things that's keeping you stuck and keep you in a place of not loving yourself, keeping you in a place of not moving forward in life.
I 100%. I had a client who, she's like, I just don't know what happy feels like. And so we felt into it, and this word freedom came out, and she looked like a little jolted. And I was like, what was that about? And she goes, it just feels so big and hard and scary. And I'm like, well, then that's probably the perfect word for you for this year. And so she's been looking at this. She has a couple other words too, but the free word that she thought was going to be so hard, she's like, actually, when I look around my life, I see all the choices that I actually do have, that I am actually free, that, okay, freedom doesn't feel, I'm not going to like get on a plane and run away from my family or anything. Like that doesn't have to be what free is. But free to me is like, I can make a choice in this situation, that I have more than one choice. Even if I don't like all my choices, it still means that I have freedom. So she is absolutely finding more freedom because that's what she's focused on looking at, right? So whatever we're looking for, that's surely what we're going to find. Mm-hmm. And so focusing on what we want is a lot more helpful than focusing on, problems back here, they always happen. I grew up really poor. People can get anxious about money. It's one of the biggest things that they get anxious about. And I just wanted you to hear, money comes in, money leaves, money comes in, money leaves. And I'm going to figure out if we get to be homeless, I'm going to figure out what we're going to do. And if we have a castle, which we would never have, we would just have a small house, big property. I'm going to figure out what to do too. But like letting go of some of that anxiety, some of us can get so addicted to the anxious feelings, like it almost becomes an addiction that our body is just always looking for them. And this is one way that we can switch out of that survival mode and more into that thriving mode of like, well, what is it that I actually want? And it doesn't mean both things are true. I'm not asking anybody to ignore their problems, but often there's problems where we can't really do anything about it. We're just thinking about every worst case scenario that could happen. None of that is helpful. No. None of that is helpful. So, if there's not something that you can actually do about it, then I usually say, all right, problem, there's nothing I can do about you this week. I'm just waiting for these other things that I can't control. And so I'm just going to wait till next Wednesday. And next Wednesday, I'll check in with myself around 4:00 and I'll say, hey, is it now there anything I can do? And if there's not, I'm going to push it off another week. And that's how I manage my anxiety around things, really, is just that there's nothing I can do about it. Just sitting here and spinning my wheels is just going to make me feel icky and anxious and crazy.
Mm-hmm. And stuck. And I love that you talk about the money, because a lot of people get it welled up and about money and things like that. And I noticed like we put ourselves in predicaments where we make ourselves unhappy because of money. And I want people to let go of that, like people working jobs and being around people or doing things that's not bringing them happiness or not letting them explore their version of happiness or peace because they think they're required to do this because society said you got to pay, you got to do this, you got to do that. I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that so I can pay for this and that. But little do you know, if you start loving yourself, you start to attract and you start to walk towards things that brings in that joy and brings in that happiness, and you can go into spaces that you feel comfortable. So I don't want you guys to stay in a job or relationships or places that are bringing you heartache or bringing you distress because you feel like you're required to do that. A version of self-love is walking away from things that are not serving you, even if it's bringing you a lot of money. It's a problem.
It costs something, right? That's really what it is. It's costing the most important thing, which is, that your enjoyment of life. What is the point of life if we're not feeling some type of joy or some type of happiness, whatever? I'm not saying it's going to always be 100%. Yeah. We all have parts of our job that we don't like, right? Like social media and whatnot is not my favorite thing to do. And yet, in order to have the parts of the job that I really love, I do those things. So I'm not saying that we never have to do things that we don't like to do. And if it's really costing you your peace, if it's costing you connections with your families that would be really, awesome. If it's, costing you quality time with your family, to me, that's too big a cost. And we don't really add those costs up, right? We just see, oh, well, if I worked an extra 4 hours, I can make some overtime. And instead, I could be home with my family and loving on them, and that would probably last me a lot longer than those 4 hours of overtime money. And
It does.
that's what that we have to start thinking about.
I had to do that because I was a worker. I was working my butt off, and I was like, yeah, I was able to provide everything I needed to provide for my family. And then I lost the connection with them. And I'm like, yeah, it's not worth it. And I realized when I cut my hours back, I was still able to sustain. Like, did I need those extra hours? No, I was being greedy because I thought I needed, like, oh, I need to save that. I need to save that. And my life did not change or switch when I cut those hours off, except for the relationship with my kids. It got better.
Right. You had a little bit more time for yourself.
Always manage to manage. We're always managed to manage. You always manage to figure it out if you put the right things in place and you plan yourself and you organize yourself. Because when we got extra money, we usually get extra expenses. And like I got extra money coming in, so I add extra things to my roster where you don't actually need those things. So it's just like analyzing yourself and it's like, am I actually causing myself actual more heartache or more frustration by keep adding things that I really don't need, but I think I need because I have access to money? And now actually evaluate what you truly want in your life and what you truly need, and then just focus on those things instead of all the extra things that you think that you need to just exist in this world. You know what I'm saying? The world thinks I need the newest car, I need the biggest house, I need 70 TV, I need the biggest TV in my house, I need to have all this. Like, no, we have 2 TVs and we have Wi-Fi. I don't even do cable no more because who watch TV? Like, why is I paying for cable? Nobody even watch TV no more. They're on YouTube, you're on Netflix. Everybody just get a subscription somewhere. Like, just realize what you're actually spending your money on and just analyze what you're actually using. Are you using all these things that you're buying, or are you just buying them just because you can?
Or you're buying them because you're working so much. I mean, I think that the addictions that we don't talk enough about in this country, because we are a capitalist society and I'm a really bad consumer, is that when I started really loving myself and knowing who I was, I didn't need all the extras. When I started minding what I was doing for a living and felt a lot less stress, I didn't need to go to Starbucks. I didn't need to go to all these places and spending money. We hardly buy anything now. And it's not that we can't. We just, first of all, I don't like shopping. But what I realized is, like, when I was young, we were really poor. There was like 5 kids, and my parents made, I think, 20 some $1,000s together. And so there was like no money. When I was in my 20s and I was bartending and going to school, I could afford whatever I wanted. And sure, at first I started buying myself clothing. I got the new car, I got the thing, and I realized they made me happy for about 5 minutes. And then it was like, now I need something else. So what did I fall to then is the other beautiful consumer addiction that we have in this country, which is workaholism. There's so many people that avoid their conflicts in their family and their personal lives, avoid thinking about themselves or like what they really want, and just work extra hours and work more hours because that's rewarded in our country. It's, you taking extra time to be with your kids, not necessarily rewarded in this country. And it took me a long time to get over that because I was a child of the 80s and my mother was like, you're going to have to work twice as hard as a man just to get half as much credit or whatever. And so I was a 60 to 80 hours kind of girl, the entire time. I went to school full time. I worked full time. That was who I was. And all it really got me was exhausted. And I have to tell you, when I first started my own business, I probably put in 60, 80 hours a week because that's, new business, got to do this, blah, blah, blah. A few years ago, I cut down to no more than 35 hours a week. I did so much better. This year, I cut out doing a lot of my social media that I thought I had to do like every day. It's like 3 times a month now. I only send 1 email a month to my clients not to my clients, but to my list because I hated come up with all that content too. I have more clients this year than I've had in the past few years, even though I've done a lot less. So I just would love people to rethink that sometimes doing less is actually doing more, because what happens is I show up to my coaching calls really fresh, not fried out from trying to come up with stuff that needs to go on social media. I have more time to do learning for my own, for my coaching business. I still am learning. So I love to listen to podcasts. I love to read books. I have more time for that. So I think that when we start doing the things that we actually enjoy out of the work, instead of just focusing on the things that we don't like, we show up differently. Mm-hmm. And so that just, kind of flourishes through all of our areas of our life. People see us showing up differently.
Yeah, and because it's more intentional. Mm-hmm. When you spend less time and you're not trying to put it out there, you get to focus on the attention behind it. And when you show up in your full presence, people can feel it. And they know that this person is truly looking. Like, just like you're hoping they want to be seen, they can actually feel seen when you show up in this space, not just you try to check them off a list. You know what I'm saying? And that's the goal. That's the goal, is for people to be seen. And then while you're hoping other people be seen, you get seen too. You know what I'm saying? So it's both validating yourself and hoping other people get validated in the process, shining through, giving people other opportunity to shine their light too. So we understand, like, we have to show up intentionally. We don't just have to show up. We have to be present when we show up. And it's hard for a lot of people to be present because, like you said, anxiety, we don't live in our present moment. We either back here or up here.
We're here.
Yeah.
Scrolling, right? Which means that we're also not present. We're in that other storyline or whatever, is going on.
Just try to be present. Try to be more present. It will help you so much, because that connection that you'll feel like, oh my God, I never felt this before. I never feel just being connected with somebody and just being lost in a conversation with somebody without thinking about your phone or thinking about what you have to do tomorrow, thinking about what you didn't accomplish. You know what I'm saying? Just be present in that conversation or in that place and see how it feels.
Yeah. Give yourself some time to be bored. That's one of the things I've been telling my clients. Give yourself time to be bored. There's something that happens when we get to boredom, is it's like neutralizing our body. And because of the so much stimulation that we have, whether that's the Netflix and the Hulu and the whatever, or scrolling on our phone, or just the amount of information that's thrown at us in a day is just phenomenal. Even 50 years ago, we didn't have the same type of information. Like, if you wanted to know the answer to a question, you had to think about it all the way to the library. You know what I mean? You had to ponder how, what the answer to the question was, and then hope that the library had the answer, right? They didn't always have the answer. And today we just get all this information so fast that our brains don't have that time to neutralize. They're constantly in that worry state of the future, or in that shame place of the past, or whatever. And we really have lost the ability to be bored. And I got to tell you, some of my greatest ideas and things have happened in moments where I was bored. And most of my creativity, right? Like, I used to write a lot of poetry in high school or do sketches because I was bored. Why don't I do it now? Because I keep myself occupied. And a lot of those things, I don't need to play games on my phone. I could be doing something creative, but I haven't given my body that time to be bored. And I think our bodies need that. Our nervous systems need that. So, so you can go, whoever's out there can just say, Christina on this podcast said I should be bored, so I can't do anything for a couple of hours. Yes, absolutely.
And send them the clip. We're going to make sure we make a clip so you can send it to them.
So. Absolutely. Keep bored. I just think kids were so creative when they were bored, and now they don't have that chance. And so a lot of them don't. Some parents, like,
my baby, she'll take a box and make whatever she wants with it. I'm like, no tablet, no that. She's like, okay, mommy got a box. I'm like, yep, go ahead it. And watch it into.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's what we need. That's how innovation happens, right? That's how new ideas happen. I think that's so special. Yeah. And I think that we take too much of that away from our children and ourselves. It's not just about, I know we'll do anything for our children, and we might consider using some of those tactics for ourselves as well.
Exactly. Well, before we end today's episode, would you like to give the listeners any advice or any skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I think self-love is a lot to being just gentle and compassionate with our humanness. Just remembering you're not a robot. I love Maya Angelou's quote that says something like, once you know better, you do better. Not always true. Sometimes we know better and it takes us a few tries, a few hundred tries to get it right. And that's okay too. But just being gentle with yourself and being compassionate, just as you would with somebody else that you love so much. And then really tuning in. Don't be scared to tune in, because it's all okay. Whatever's going on in there, we're all kind of a mess on the inside, and that's okay. We just get to love it and be gentle with it.
Mm-hmm. I love that quote. Like you said, once you know better, you should do better. But now I think it means once you know better, you have the opportunity to do better now.
Yeah.
Because if you're aware of what you're doing, is no opportunity to actually change it. So just giving yourself the opportunity to see you is the best part. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes we're clueless, and like you said, robots, we walk through the world thinking that this is it, and that's it. We don't actually explore more of what, instead of what we were presented with. And we're like, this is life. And that's why when people encounter other people, I'm like, hold on, that's possible? Never seen it in my life. Like people that come from unhealthy childhood, they're like, people actually talk to people like that. I never knew that. And people look at them like they're weird. Like, what do you mean? Because people don't actually see people outside of their life. Like, this is how I always been raised. So I just assume everybody's life is the way my life was. And it's not true. So for us to see new things, we have to explore new things, and that bringing knowledge to self. You know what I'm saying? So just go and explore. And then once you know more, now you have the opportunity. You might not want it, but it's still a choice. Now, like you said before, you have a choice now. You have a choice of which road you got. You know, you don't have to stay in this lane any longer if you don't want to. But if you have a choice.
Perfect example is I had a friend just the other day ask me, well, Christina, what happens when you and your husband get really angry at each other and start calling each other names? And I'm like, whoa, we don't do that. Like, that's one of our boundaries, is like, if it ever gets to the point where we're calling names or raise our voices, we know it's time to a cooling off period and coming back when the conversation is able to be a conversation and not a screaming match. And she just couldn't believe it. She was like, but that's how you were raised. Yeah, that's how I was raised. That's why I don't put up with that. Like, that is like, no, this is how I was raised. I do not want to repeat that. So there are so many ways of living our lives. And I think that it's really important to see lots of different perspectives. And I know that your podcast is really helping women open their eyes to other ways of, not just loving other people, but loving themselves and really, standing up for themselves. So thank you for having me on today.
I appreciate it. Can you please tell the listeners where they can find you, your website, and your social media?
Sure can. My website is Christina-Smith.com. My podcast, which is currently on hiatus, but we'll be back in the fall, is at invitingshift.com. And you can find me on the Instagram if you just go through my website. But it's Christina Smith XOXO, and I am there. I'm on Facebook. I am everywhere. And if you are a midlife woman or any woman that wants to have a little bit more confidence, I do have a confidence toolkit that you can go to. If you just go to Christina-Smith.com, and you'll find the link to it so that you can have some really core steps to really refinding your confidence, or finding it for the first time if you've never felt confident before.
We'll have all of that linked down below in the show notes for you guys to access all of that stuff. Well, thank you for coming on the show today, and I truly appreciate you coming here and helping these listeners find a new way to love themselves and understand love on a whole different level, because I just want them to understand that love is more than just the tools that we get to practice it.
Yes, self-love is a practice. It's one of my quotes I use all the time. It is a practice. It's not a magic. I woke up and had warm, fuzzy feelings about myself one day. I wish it went that way, but unfortunately, no. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and, staying all the way to the end. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today's episode of a Sisters Love podcast. But before we end, I would love for you to be part of our new support group. It's called a Sisters Love support group. And inside this group, you get access to resources. You get access to some of those guests that are on the podcast, and you can ask them questions. You'll also get access to a judge-free zone, a community of women who understand you and who's trying to help you on your journey of healing. So if you are a woman who is in the beginning stages of her healing journey and you need some resources, or you need a little bit of guidance, or you just want to feel welcome and loved and not judged, then you are in the right place. And I would love for you to join our group. All you have to do is click the link below and put your email in there, and you'll get access to the group instantly. And your first resource you'll get access is creating safety in your healing journey. And this guide will help you navigate yourself out of survival mode, help you create a foundation of stabilization so that you can actually start your healing journey on the right track. So I would love for you to be part of our sister. All you got to do is click the link in the show notes. Until next time, bye.